So, hello everyone. We're here today with Tracey Dean. Tracey is from Stanford and she's a trust technique practitioner. So, welcome, Tracey.
Thank you, Anna. It's nice to be here. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for inviting me along to say a little bit about me and what I do. It's quite nice, it's exciting.
Yeah, good. So, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do and what trust technique is?
Yeah, sure. So, obviously, I'm a trust technique practitioner. And I'm a mindfulness. I'm really passionate about kind of mindfulness and meditation, and I teach all sorts of variations of that. So mindfulness, breath work. I work with people at various different levels. So from kind of teaching them how to set up a mindfulness practice, to sort of coaching them through some of the issues they come across when their mind's quiet, and into sort of deeper therapy work if that's where they want to go. And the trust technique is one aspect of what I do, because the trust technique is a really simple mindfulness method of working with people and animals, and it's based on the theory that when humans and animals are together, they share feelings, and it works on reducing thinking levels, so our thinking levels and the thinking levels in our animals. It's a really lovely practice, one that can be learned in the space of an hour and a half in a consultation. So happy to tell you a little more about that if you'd like.
Yeah, go on. I mean, you've got a little dog, haven't you?
Yeah, so like many of us right now, we've found ourselves in this really unusual situation, which, to be honest, there's no guidance really on how you're supposed to feel about this, and everybody's going to be having a very different reaction to it. It's going to be affecting all of us differently. For some of us, it's going to be bringing up lots of worries and fears and concerns about livelihoods and futures. And also, if you're used to being outdoors a lot, suddenly we can't do that anymore. Or you may have your children at home, which you're not used to having your children at home. And also, for those of us who are sharing our homes with pets, we have our pets in the midst of that, who will also be having their own feelings and reactions to this new situation. And we were just talking a little bit before we started about how I'm noticing with my own little doggy. So I've got my own little dog, Sunny, who he's a little bit anxious. He's a little bit of an anxious character as a rule. The trust technique has been brilliant for us, and kind of helping him with that, and helping me with that, with me not getting caught up in his anxieties and reacting to him. And we've noticed that, you know, the change in the routine has had an impact on him. He's not getting, normally we work and we would have periods of time out the house, or we'd be away from the house, and he'd have his sleep time. His first few weeks, we hadn't really thought about the fact that because we were here, he'd be fine hanging out with us all the time. But we've noticed slowly that he seemed a little unsettled and it just wasn't quite himself. He's not really adjusting too well to not having his usual pattern of walks. So the trust technique and using mindfulness techniques has really helped me to sort of tune in a little more with him and what he needs, and recognize that just because we're home, perhaps it's really useful that we keep him in a routine. So we make sure that he has his sleep time.
Yeah.
And we're making much more of an effort to keep him active, and, you know, playing games with him and things like that, just things so he's kind of we're not just taking it for granted that because we're with him he's stimulated. So,
yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating, isn't it? And they pick up on our emotions so much as well, don't they? And if we're a bit anxious and worried at the minute, then you can see it in your dog, can't you?
Absolutely. And that's exactly what the trust technique works with and recognizes, is this shared feeling that that happens between us, and how, you know, it brings our attention and our awareness to, firstly, the sort of feelings that we have. You know, it brings it up into the sort of here and now. So if you know anything about mindfulness practices, it works very much on bringing our attention and our focus into the present.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main things that causes the biggest overthinking in people and animals is one of the biggest, it's not the right word, is one of the most common causes of behavioral problems.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we think affects how we feel, and then how we feel affects how we behave.
Yeah.
So the trust technique recognizes that that process goes on in humans and in animals, and that what can happen is when we're locked into kind of cycles of negative thinking, or if our thinking is causing us to feel anxious, and then that anxiety might be causing us to behave in a way that might not be helpful, that's for human and animals,
Mm-hmm.
that we can end up reacting to each other.
Yeah.
So, and then that reaction kind of gets shared, it just kind of gets pinballed kind of between you. So I mean, a good example is you've got an anxious dog. Say you've got an anxious, fear aggressive dog on a lead. The person goes, "Ah, I don't like this dog." The dog goes, "Well, that person, I don't like that person's energy, so I'm going to go towards them even more." And then that pushes the person back, and this kind of cycle continues. So by bringing our attention or our focus into the here and now, that's where we can change things. That's where we can make things more peaceful for us.
And I
And
think people think, perhaps, sorry, I just jumped in, and I think perhaps people think at the minute, because they're perhaps not doing as much, that they are chilled out, that they are relaxing. But actually, I can remember when you came and did a session with me and Prim, to sit and try and make your mind quiet, and you made me like write down each time I had a thought,
yeah,
whatever. When I was thinking, like, thought, and there's so much going on in our heads that
yeah.
we don't realise. And it's almost being able to control your thoughts, isn't it, and taking it to a...
Absolutely. And this is one of the things when you start practicing mindfulness and meditation. If anybody's done this, this is the technique you use with the trust technique is, as you know, is actually really simple.
Mhm.
You know, but surprisingly full of potential for, oh my God, I had no idea that when I sit quiet, that thought pops into my head, or that thought pops into my head, or...
It can be anything, like as when we were sat here, like a motorbike. Joe was on his motorbike, and you were like, "Oh well, I know exactly what that thought was." And you just, it can be a sound that makes you go, "Oh, what's that?" Or, "Oh, what's he doing now?" Or, and I think it's so important that you start to realise what's going on. I mean, if I do sit and meditate, Cody, our big shepherd, will always come and lay by me, and he's always zoned out.
yeah,
Grim less though, but
yeah, absolutely. That's because what I've come to learn through the trust technique is that animals are drawn to people who make them feel good. Animals want to feel good. So they're drawn to other animals, they're drawn to humans who make them feel good. So when we feel good, they want to be with us. And over time, once you start to learn how you can generate that feeling of peace inside you by quietening your mind down, which does take practice. It does take practice, because the mind does not always quieten willingly. You know, sometimes it fights quite a lot. I can't possibly sit right now because I've got this to do, and that to do, and that to do, and I've got this to worry about, and that to worry about. And training our minds to kind of let this stuff come in and go, you know, so we don't have to attach to every single thought that we have, you know, and we can choose what we choose to attach to. And you notice when you get quiet, you might notice that you tend to have a habit of thinking negatively and going down those trains of thought. this can really help you to break those cycles of negative thinking. And when we get caught up, particularly now, you know, what if, and what's going to happen, and what's going to change, and when are we going to be allowed out again? You know, the more you can think about that, you can probably feel anxiety raising in your body. So by being able to catch yourself and learn to catch yourself when you're in the midst of a unhelpful chain of thought, can just help you go, that's okay, let it go. Take some breaths, just sit quietly. The trust technique is particularly about going through this process with your animals, and the byproduct of that is it creates this really beautiful space that our animals enjoy being in with us.
So you don't just do this with dogs either, do you? Tell us through, because you've done a lot with your horse, haven't you? So tell us your journey that you've gone on with her.
I can tell you a little bit about how I found the trust technique. So I discovered it, I've been using it since about 2016. This was on the back of, I got a horse back in 2015, December 2015. This horse arrived, who I knew had some trust issues. I knew she had some issues around having her legs touched. I kind of felt like, yeah, I can deal with this. This will be fine. However, now I look back, I realize what was happening at the time is I was also going through quite a few changes in my personal life. So my work, I was going through a 2P process at work. So the organization I was working for was getting taken over at the time. So there was some stress around about that, naturally. I was also moving house, also stressful, and kind of doing what I normally do, which a lot of us do, which is like, I'll be fine, I've just got to do XYZ and it'll all be fine. And not really acknowledging the fact that I was actually quite stressed. Good stress in a way, but stressed. What I hadn't bargained for is that I had a particularly sensitive mare who was picking up on all my anxieties and reacting to me. This led us to just get quite scared of each other. Trust broke down between us quite quickly, to the point that I was getting, which I think some people will relate to this, if they've got horses or they've had difficulties with their horses, that feeling of waking up in the morning. This is where it got to. And I was waking up in the morning and almost dreading going to the yard, because I knew that I'd have to go and put her head collar on her, and that she was just scaring me as I was kind of leading her down the yard. And the more scared I became of her, the more scared she became of me. And it all ended in her throwing me off a couple of times and me getting kind of hurt. But you know what? I've come to learn that animals with problems, or should I say animals with people problems, is probably
Absolutely.
is more the case, can be such a gift, you know, really, because if it hadn't been for her, I'd never have kind of had the courage to take a good long hard look at my life and acknowledge that I was stressed and acknowledge that I was anxious, and find the courage not to go into this new organization. I found the trust technique, a friend recommended it. I started by signing up to the video course, following the content of that and practicing. Just immediately I could see results, just as I calmed down and stopped trying to fix it all and figure it all out and just let it all be, and focused more on the connection and the relationship. Just things improved. And then when they put out the practitioner qualification, it was a new qualification that was 2.5 years ago. I applied in the first round and was accepted. It's been such an amazing journey. It's been just brilliant. I love it, and it's brought more mindfulness into my life. and our animals love it.
Key at this time of everything going on, isn't it?
It's when I think about that experience, and I think about now, of course I'm anxious like lots of people. Of course I get moments where I think about it, but we use a lot of scales in the trust technique, and these kind of spectrums of kind of naught being this really deep healing state that we can be in, to 10 being blind panic, you know, where we've lost it, and how we can recognize thinking levels in our animals, but we can also recognize that in ourselves. So because it's almost my daily go-to practice. I if I'm not practicing it with my cats or my dogs, I practice it on my own. I practice it with my horse. I can recognize that process. So yes, I still overthink at times, but I catch myself, especially when it's going down a path that might not be good. If for want of a better word, I can go, oh, okay, I can see where this is going, and just bring myself back to the here and now. So it's been really good for me right now. So yes,
it's so funny, isn't it, as well, how we're almost, it's easier to think negatively than it is to think positively, and I think it's such a big thing in dog behavior as well, that we're always quick to go, oh, well, my dog doesn't like this, or my dog doesn't like that, when actually most of the problem is us. And it's like our end of the lead, isn't it? And how we feel, and how, like, if we're rushed and stressing about, then you can guarantee your dogs will be under your feet, and because they're going, oh God, what's wrong? And you can see it play out back through them, can't you?
Completely. And and working with this way, the trust technique brings all our attention and focus and awareness to that process. So because we spend this amazing space, we create this amazing listening state. So it's made up of 3 main principles: creative reaction, realization learning, and trusted cooperation. So as a practitioner, I mostly focus on creative reaction, which is, it's quite self-explanatory. We create a feeling that we want our animals to react to. So exactly like you said, instead of being mindless about how we are around our animals, because most of us are, aren't we? We aren't really focused. We're kind of just going about our daily business. We've got all this stuff going on in our heads, and a lot of time we're just not aware that our animals are incredibly intuitive and sensitive. They know us much better than we know ourselves. And they're reacting, and then as soon as we are aware of it, it's usually when it's got bad, or difficult, then we become aware of it. And then that's where we can get into habits of making quite unhelpful judgments and labels: naughty, bad, dangerous, aggressive, they don't like this, they're scared of their own. When we're doing that, we're missing out on all this amazing information that our animals are giving us. They're just trying to communicate how they feel, and they can't do it verbally. So their only way of expressing their inner world is through body language and the non-verbal. So when we work with creative reaction, our animal, that's made up of something called focus presence, which is the actual technique that we use, which, remember when we did, which is the kind of, we're going to just focus on something, and we're just going to let thoughts come and go, and practice that, to then mindful regard, which is this listening state where we're kind of noticing and observing reaction points in our animals. So as they kind of react to that feeling, anything that is causing them, peace and unpeace can't be in the same place at the same time. So anything that's causing them to feel unpeaceful comes to the surface. It's such a beautiful way to just get to know your animals. So with time and with practice, things like that you were saying, where we're reacting to each other, just can naturally subside, because we know our animals so well. We recognize those micro signals in them that says their thinking levels are coming up, or they're starting to get agitated. So therefore we can kind of almost head off behavioral problems before they start, because we go, oh, I can see that my dog is getting agitated here, or I can see that my horse is starting to get nervous by that over there.
Yeah.
I can do something different. So you can sort of avoid getting into trouble, getting yourself into trouble and getting your animals into trouble. It has so much scope for how it can benefit us, especially I'm thinking about people who are not able to ride, for example, at the moment. So all the people that are on lockdown at yards and they can't ride, and they're getting frustrated about that, and they're getting worried about that. You know, how lovely to go and practice this with them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, I suppose if people have got, like you say, a bit more time at home, they could sit and practice with their dog.
5-10 minutes.
And
5-10
that's
minutes.
almost a nice way to get into, so we said earlier about like brushing your dog at home and coat maintenance and stuff.
Absolutely.
Practice this for 5-10 minutes beforehand, and actually your dog will perhaps be in a much more relaxed state. And then it's more helpful for both of you, isn't it?
Well, that's the next phase on. Once you kind of, if you can go as deeply into the trust technique as you like and take it as far as you like. It's not a method of training. It's more how we introduce. It's a more a philosophy around how we create a space in where a listening state where we can introduce training.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's more about how we set up training. So exactly like you said, for animals that are a bit nervous about being brushed, or there's something they're anxious about, if we can create if we can bring their thinking levels down and create this state, animals, just like people, learn better when our minds are quiet. We're able to take information in, we can retain it better. You know, we can see the situation differently because we're not looking at it through fearful or anxious eyes. We're able to look at it through a peaceful state of mind. So perfect. Get establishing a nice practice, and then if there's something your animal's a bit worried about, introduce it. That's the best time to introduce it and work with them with it. So the potential for what it can offer in terms of training or preparing dogs for being groomed, or maybe like with horses, you know, introducing them to things that you might have to do. So I'm thinking about worming them or shoeing them or injecting them. You know, if you can we have to do a lot of stuff with our animals that they don't really like sometimes, you know, and if we can help them be okay with that, it's our responsibility, I feel, to help them be okay with that, rather than going from a more dominant kind of, you will do this, so we're going to hold you down and we're going to do that. That works in the short term, but it doesn't actually teach our animals to accept it and be okay with it. Mm-hmm. And conversely, it can actually set up more problems in the long run. I would argue, you know, it gets the job done, but it's much nicer to
be cooperative together.
That's the very last stage of the trust technique, trusted cooperation, working together for a mutual benefit, and creating a space where you're really in sync with your animals, and you're both getting something out of it.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Oh, I love it. I get very excited about it. But
it's good. You should be passionate about it. It's your thing.
Very, very passionate about it. It's done wonders for my mare, you know, and wonders for me actually. Mm-hmm. You know, things that I perhaps would have been worried about 3 or 4 years ago. I just kind of go, let it go. Tomorrow's another day. She's allowed her own personality. Our animals are allowed to have a personality and an opinion. It's up to us to decide whether we want to listen to that and act on that or not. You know, I prefer that relationship with my animals, that it's much more cooperative and give and take, and it's not all just about me and my needs and my wants and what I need. It's about, come on, let's work together.
Do it together. Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting. So you've sent me a couple of links which I will share with this as well. when I share the video, and I'm hoping to be able to turn it into a written blog as well somehow. I have to get my thinking cap on, and then we can add it into that.
Thing what you're doing, so it's really lovely. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you're going to do with all of this, and it's lovely to bring people together. And I'm very passionate about bringing animal professionals and people who are in that to adopt a more mindful mindset, and encourage people that of the benefits of it. A lot, I've noticed more and more, a lot of horse trainers that I really admire are talking about mindfulness and being mindful and being in the present and allowing animals to have their opinions, that we're coming further and further away from those old mindsets around dominance and control. We are letting them go slowly. Some people are finding it a bit more difficult. So I think it's really lovely to sort of be sharing these things, and like I said, it's so simple to learn. We can do, you can do this online. Within a space of an hour and a half, we can have a consultation. I can teach you the technique. You can get practicing. You can get started with your animal. There's a really, really lovely, I sent you the link to the Messages of Trust. They're gorgeous little set of videos. I think they're about 50 minutes altogether. They've just put these out. I think they cost about £6.50 altogether. It's nothing really. The first 20 minutes are free, so the link's there so you can check them out, but they just explains really nicely what the trust technique is and can really help you get more out of a session. So I'm not a saleswoman. I'm not here to sell videos to people. I personally went down the route of the video course first and then kind of took it that way. The video course is full. It's got about 50 hours of videos, but really, really useful because there's lots of different issues, lots of animals with different issues, and lots of tutorials and showing James French, who's the founder, and his partner Shelley, applying the concepts in different situations. So it's really, really helpful if you choose to go down that road. And then obviously I'm available. If something comes out of it that you think, this is actually turning into a bit of a block for me, I think I might like to talk about that and we can work further with that. Might be that you want more help with your animals, more practical help with them. Yeah,
you can do all of that. So if where can people go to find out more about you?
About me? So I've got I should have given you my links to that, shouldn't you? I forgot about that. So I'm on Facebook at the moment. My page is under something called Find Your Nature, but I am going to be changing that to my name, which will be Tracey Dean. I've been messing about with it really, and I don't like the name. But you can't change it back for 60 days, can you? So Find Your Nature is my website name, but again, that's currently under construction, so that's probably some change. But best place to find me is my page, which is currently Find Your Nature, and it will say Embodied Mindfulness with Tracey. Or I'm on Instagram, and it's Tracey Dean .79, I think is I'm pretty certain that's what it is at the moment off the top of my head. I'm rubbish at remembering. So there would be the best places to find me, and you can just drop me a line, or if you want to know any more, if you've got any questions, I'm more than happy to chat about how I can help you and you and your animals, or help you have this difficult time.
Yeah, super. It's been great chatting to you.
Thank you. Lovely chatting to you too. Thank you for listening.
See you as well. I've not seen you for ages.
I know. Time just flies though, doesn't it? It just flies.
It does. So we'll see you soon then.
Yeah.
Stay safe. See you soon.